Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another digital North American FP&A board. My name is Larissa Melnichuk, and I'm here to facilitate this discussion. And the subject is integrated FP&A, how to achieve agile and continuous planning. Just a quick reminder to you that the main mission of digital FP&A board is to share with you the latest trends and developments in modern FP&A. And of course, we are traveling digitally at the moment. In North America, we have 8 chapters in different cities. Those meetings that we managed to have before the situation when we do all the meetings digitally, a lot of interesting insights for you. So today we are going to talk about integrated and continuous planning. So this is the subject, this is the agenda: FP&A integration, key concepts and definitions, agile FP&A. Then we will have 2 case studies, one from a big insurance company from Sweden, path to integration, and another one from technology from a chemical company Clariant on their real-time cost forecasting and pricing. There will be conclusions and recommendations, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. And now this is the timing to introduce our international panel that is coming from 5 countries. I would like to ask all our panelists to switch on the cameras, and we will start with quick introductions. Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. Yeah, I can see that Jonas, are you with us? So please, can you join us as well? While Jonas is joining us with his camera on, let us start with quick introductions. So the first one is L'Oréal Gilles, who is VP Research and Thought Leadership at IMA. L'Oréal is based in US, California, nearly 15 years of experience as a practitioner previously in the energy industry. Former IMA Global Board Director. At the moment, she's responsible for thought leadership in management, accounting, and also research. And L'Oréal authored a dozen of articles and research and reports across global media outlets. L'Oréal, welcome. Welcome to FP&A Trends webinar.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Thank you so much. Let us move on. And we have Jonas Ekegren here, who is head of business and capital planning at a big insurance company in Sweden, Länsförsäkringar. Jonas is a member of our Stockholm FP&A board. He has more than 20 years of experience in banking and insurance industry. And at the moment, he is heading not only finance, but also business strategy, capital planning in his company. And of course, a lot of experience in integrated FP&A. And he has experience from business divisions as well as the group level as well. Jonas, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Let us move on. And now we have Robert Voultier, who is former procurement director at Clariant. At the moment, he is senior advisor to MIPGON NDC. He's based in Switzerland and has over 30 years of senior management experience in all business functions. He had full P&L responsibilities and in-depth knowledge of costing and pricing. And actually, he was initiator of this amazing project that the case study that we are going to demonstrate. So Clariant real-time forecasting tool. Robert, you're welcome. And now we have Rainer Fischer, project lead at the Clariant Initiative project. Rainer is based in Germany. He has more than 25 years of experience in technology implementation in different industries. And he's a member of Clariant's Global Business Service Data to Insight team. And he's a global process expert for procurement and supply chain projects in his company. Rainer, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Larissa. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you. Let us move on. I would like to ask our panelists to switch off the cameras. Just a few general slides from my side. My experience at the moment, I'm managing director at Fpna Trends Group, an international Fpna board, but formerly practitioner, British qualified accountant based just outside of London in the UK. Those are the chapters that we have around the globe, and today we are joining those 8 chapters in North America. But amazingly, we have more than 350 registrations from 44 countries. But the majority, 75% of people, are coming from North America. Just a little bit about Fpna Trends Group. Recently, we started Fpna Strategic Advisory and Research, and of course, our Fpna Trends website is the leading resource for modern Fpna professionals. About this Fpna board, so 90 minutes webinar, there will be 4 polling questions, and you're welcome to participate. There will be interactive Q&A session at the end. It would be wonderful to have this networking. You're welcome to directly connect or follow the panelists. Presentation is available right now in the handouts, but also recording, and the presentation will be sent to you just after the meeting. Next day after the meeting. Please take the survey after this meeting. We're always reviewing it, and we always would like to know how we can do better and what are the subjects that are interesting for you as well. Before we start, thank you so much to our technology partner, SAP, one of the world's leading provider of modern Fpna solutions. And thank you so much to our information sponsor, IMA, one of the largest and most respected association on management accounting and Fpna. Just a few concepts and definitions before we move on to the presentation from our panelists. You know that we discussed those subjects before: Agile Fpna, continuous planning, real-time planning, integrated Fpna. And at this webinar, we are trying to connect all of those. The subject of integration in Fpna, and the result of integration is ability to do continuous planning and real-time planning, which is the basis of agility, the basis of Agile Fpna. Just a few definitions for you. I'm sure that you heard from us about this one. It's Fpna board definition, and the way how we define integrated Fpna. This is the way how we integrate strategic plan, financial plan, and operational plan. And we integrate this both horizontally and vertically. There are ways how we're going to do this, but obviously the result of this integration is our ability to do continuous planning. And continuous planning is dynamic and open-ended planning process, not the one that is managed by calendar, the traditional one, but the one that we can do anytime when we have internal or external events as they arise. And of course, Agile Fpna. Agile Fpna, it's something that allows us to manage uncertainty. It enhances organizational ability to adapt quickly to market changes and effectively manage the shareholder value of the company. So those are very, very brief definitions before we start. And of course, I would like to share with you the latest insights from our 2021 Fpna Trends Survey. Some good news, actually. So it's about a real-time view of business performance. Our respondents said that the percentages increase. At the moment, 45% of our respondents, they have a real-time view of business performance. This is 10% increase since last year. But also what we find out that the real-time view is increased when companies have driver-based model, it's increased to 50%. And when companies have AI ML, it's increased to 71%. So those are the insights. And now, before we start, I would like really to hear from you. The first polling question, and it's all about what is the situation with integration in your company. While I'm launching the polling question, please be ready to vote. You can do this very easily through your technology. So please, can you start and vote right now? How would you describe the level of your FP&A integration? And please think about those three main planning processes. Planning processes are not integrated at all. They're integrated between finance and operational levels. They're integrated between finance and strategy, fully integrated. So please, can you continue to vote? So what is the best description of your current planning process? Just a few seconds, more than 60% of you voted. Just a few seconds, and I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. I'm sharing the results. And I would like to ask L'Oreal to comment on this. So you can see that 42% of those 42% of our participants, they say that their planning process is integrated between finance and operational level. 35% between 35% not integrated at all, 19% integrated between finance and strategy, and amazingly 4% fully integrated. L'Oreal, what would be your commentary?
Certainly. This is incredibly consistent with what we've seen as we interact and engage with other finance and accounting leaders throughout the globe. There is an increasing effort, I'd say, to integrate finance and operational activities. And so that has been happening from a planning perspective, I'd say, over the past couple of decades. Where we're seeing increasing trends are headed toward finance and strategy, and ultimately, ideally, the fully integrated approach to planning, or to FP&A. For those of you who have not integrated your processes yet, that is not, you're not in the minority, I'd say, and so that is something that's common in today's world, but hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll be inspired to take charge and begin that integrated initiative as well.
Thank you so much for your commentary, L'Oreal. Thank you everyone who voted. I'm hiding the results, and let us move on. So we are going towards our first presentation, and this is this joining slide. Let us look at the definition and thought leadership about Agile FP&A. This is the first presentation, and L'Oreal, you're welcome to join us, and the floor is yours.
All right, camera is working, wonderful. So again, delighted to be here. This is an incredibly important topic, and happy that you're joining us today to learn a bit more about it. So we'll talk through the agenda points here. We will focus on a 360-degree view of an Agile FP&A function. We'll talk about a few use cases in agility from an FP&A perspective. My background is in robotic process automation and artificial intelligence, and so I'll share a few examples of how we leverage those technologies as well, and then where we're headed as a global finance and accounting, or FP&A profession. So first, we'll start with what is Agile. Agile is a software development lifecycle that focuses on iterative, incremental delivery by self-organizing cross-functional teams. It's an adaptive, collaborative, and customer-focused, as well as a results-oriented approach to development that revolutionized the software industry and is now being adapted to business processes across the globe. As we shift gears to think about the implications of that, in Digital AI's 14th annual State of Agile report that was released in mid-2020, and so we'll talk about the expanded use of Agile in that context, 95% of more than 1,100 survey respondents across 6 continents reported their organizations practice Agile development methods. And we'll go to the next slide to talk through that. When speaking to other areas of the organization adopting Agile approaches, well beyond IT, we look at operations, marketing, human resources, and sales. And we're seeing now that Agile also presents an innovative opportunity to increase efficiency and enhance value delivery for a function undergoing one of the largest transformations in its history, the finance function, or the FP&A function that of course includes all of those FP&A teams. To keep up in a climate of rapid change and heightened ambiguity in many instances, business leaders, including CFOs and controllers, VPs of finance, are nurturing an Agile culture. And this involves going beyond traditional project management practices to adapt Agile approaches to ad hoc projects and requests. real-time data analysis, some of that you'll hear about later in today's session, real-time data analysis and decision-making, functional transformation, and ultimately transformed operational delivery. So we'll talk now about a 360-degree view of an agile finance function. If we start with agility, Gartner defined agility as the ability of an organization to sense environmental change and to respond efficiently and effectively to it. That's reasonably consistent with the definition of Agile FP&A that Larissa covered just a few minutes ago. Gartner went on to speak to the ways in which IT functions enable agility across various industries and enterprises while presenting the emergence and relevance of agility as a standalone management discipline. Integral to leveraging agility during functional transformation is remaining laser focused on maximizing the business value to be delivered by the transformation itself. A key objective of FP&A transformation is to regularly and efficiently deliver analysis and insights that inform strategic decisions, predict performance and behavior, and propose data-backed action to prepare for and respond to change. This happens through the integrated and harmonized planning processes that were discussed earlier. Tactically, this means nimble, multidisciplinary finance or FP&A teams should be regularly engaging with internal customers. Business and operational teams would be our internal customers in that scenario to deliver the projects and recurring activities that we need with an iterative and incremental cadence. These multidisciplinary or cross-functional teams, as we position them often, represent the integrated people component of the FP&A matrix that Larissa shared, intentionally designing the organizational structure to allow for and encourage collaboration. Agile teams like these witness to agility yielding a quicker path to business value, more collaborative engagement, streamlined risk management, and efficient course correction. And those benefits, when reaped while transforming, nurture the agile culture that is essential to the transformed FP&A function. As we think about the characteristics of an agile FP&A team, we're progressing along this transformation journey, shifting primary focus from data stewardship to real-time value creation and strategic decision support. So the need for this agile FP&A function has emerged, and what that looks like, we're creating value through scalable, efficient operations, transparent, accessible data and metrics, frequent inspection to ensure fit-for-purpose insight, quick, responsible adaptation to change, and empowered, capable, and multidisciplinary teams. These attributes are where we see the integrated processes, people, and platform components of the FP&A matrix most prominently. So we'll shift gears into use cases. As we think about agile FP&A, traditionally, financial planning and analysis processes included developing a static annual financial plan and holding teams accountable from a budgetary perspective for delivery against those plans. And so shifting gears again to that next slide where we cover agile FP&A integrated planning from that perspective. These processes don't typically account for the myriad of changes that are certain to occur throughout each year when we have that static planning approach, or even the changes that are happening on a daily basis. So an agile approach to planning might begin with a full year integrated plan, but treating that plan as a true estimate, the rolling budgets that we've grown accustomed to seeing, rather than employing the static method, also considering integrating cross-functional strategic planning, financial planning, and operational planning processes. On the analytics side, through continuous screening, setting and monitoring targets, and ideally real-time data-backed decision-making, examples of which you'll hear a little bit more about in today's session, accessible data and strategic analytic skills enable efficient operations and the ability to not only respond to ad hoc requests, but also regularly scan data for opportunities, threats, and insights. So I'll end with robotic process automation and a few use cases that we see within FP&A there. For those of you unfamiliar, RPA mimics the clicks and the keystrokes of a human user while leveraging process documentation. It empowers a host of business professionals, accounting and FP&A professionals to automate processes themselves. FP&A team members are benefiting from RPA by automating generation of variance analysis reports, automating the continuous screening processes mentioned earlier to search for opportunities, threats, fraud, even among others. Pairing RPA with artificial intelligence or leveraging IPA, intelligent process automation, allows us to streamline forecasts and identify key operational performance drivers as well. So automation of these types of analyses enables real-time or at least more efficient delivery of insights that the business demands of accounting and finance functions and FP&A teams across the globe. And that feeds right into the need for greater agility, scalable and efficient processes, all key to successful FP&A transformation. So I'm happy now to invite my colleagues, the other panelists, to comment and share their insights as it's relevant to the material we've discussed.
L'Oreal, thank you so much. Such a great overview of what is Agile Finance and FP&A. Especially important to remember Agile FP&A teams, and your institute obviously doing a lot of research in this area. So thank you for sharing this comprehensive overview. I would like to invite our panelists to join us for quick commentary before we move on. Jonas, what would be your commentary on this presentation, please?
Yes, first of all, thanks for a very interesting presentation. A couple of things, perhaps starting from in the wrong direction, so to say, or backwards. You pointed out something that I think is very important to really become more agile and continuous within FP&A, and that is treat full year plan as a true estimate. That is very easy to say, but it's extremely difficult to make that transition. A huge change management task that I've experienced myself, and perhaps haven't succeeded so far, at least not fully. The other thing that resonates really well with me is what you point out there around the importance of multidisciplinary teams and the collaboration cross-functional. I think that's really important as well to be able to make this journey. I think to become really agile, we need to make a competence shift, and we also need to combine competences in a way that we perhaps haven't done historically.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you. Great insights. And Robert, you are the next, please.
Thanks, L'Oreal. Was real great, I think. If we look at our increasingly changing world along all the different value chains, to be able to cope with these changes, we need a better foresight and visibility of what is coming towards us. And for that, you need to have a higher agility in your processes. You need a real-time actually communication between what is seen in front of the car until you actually can get the organization to move ahead. I think this is where you're going into agile analysis and then also fully integrated planning.
Thank you, Robert. And now I would like to ask Raina to comment on this.
I would go a bit in the same direction as Robert mentioned this, and this we are facing within Clariant as well. Being more agile is really a very hot topic as well for us, and coming or having this set in terms of developments and development projects, now turning this into the organizational processes. This is really a real challenge in getting all these processes new identified, new redesigned, and new set up. Yeah, so that the organization fits to this new process then as well later on.
Thank you so much, everyone. And once again, L'Oreal, thank you so much for this excellent start, excellent presentation. Now it's the time for polling question number 2. We would like to ask you the question. So what is the next factor that your organization should do in order to tackle the subject of agility, FP&A agility? So please, can you start voting as soon as you see this question? What is the best description for you? What is the first factor your organization should tackle to advance FP&A agility? Is it technology? Is it your leadership support? Is it skills and competencies in finance, processes transformation, or dedicated resources that you need for this? Please, can you continue to vote? Just a few seconds, please choose one of those. What is the first factor your organization should do in order to advance FP&A agility? Just a few seconds, and I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. So you can see that 29% said that process transformation is needed. 27% said that leadership support is needed. 18% technology, and 7% you need dedicated resources. L'Oreal, any commentaries from your side?
Certainly. We just completed a study earlier this year on Agile finance and FP&A transformation, and we certainly saw results consistent with this process transformation being the biggest challenge that people are facing today, and that linked to our ways of working, how we evolve our ways of working, how we're more flexible, how we're a bit less rigid than we have been in the past. The leadership support, I think, is rightfully so incredibly important, because if the right tone is not set from the top, then the efforts that we invest are often found futile. So thank you for your engagement, for sharing your thoughts with the poll, and hopeful that you'll learn even a bit more in the next session.
Thank you, L'Oreal. Thank you all our participants for voting. And we are moving on. So we started from the agility, but now let us look what is required for agility, the subject of integrated FP&A, and we will see the finance practitioner view. So the next presentation is the case study from leading insurance company from Sweden. Jonas, you are welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will speak about FP&A integration, some important steps to get there, and how an integrated extended FP&A team can support agility. But first of all, to put things into perspective, as Larissa mentioned in the beginning, I work for Länsförsäkringar, primarily Swedish financial services group, the largest P&C insurer in Sweden. But we also run a substantial life insurance and banking business. We also have some international activities today, primarily within pet insurance, where we are expanding across the Nordic and UK region, and also into France and Germany. I'm running an organization with a broad responsibility within FP&A, and therefore I call it extended FP&A. And that is basically the gray boxes that you can see to the right in this picture. So I have the overall responsibility for strategic planning, financial, capital planning, and on top of that, M&A, corporate development, and purchasing. So quite a wide definition of FP&A. So why should we strive for integrated FP&A, and what do we mean with integration? I think of this in two dimensions. First, integrating of the FP&A functions as such, but also equally important is the integration with the business. So why should we do this? I think first of all, to leverage on competencies cross functions. As we mentioned before in the comments to the previous presentation, it's very important to combine competences going forward to become really agile. Second, to build up the structural capital, which is especially important in this field, as we usually strive for a high degree of cross-functional coordination, standardization, and alignment. In my opinion, if this is done right, FP&A can be an important driver of value creation in the business, as well as supporting agility. If we go to the next slide, in larger organizations, FP&A is often spread out in the organization. And this was also the case with us going a few years back. When we created our current FP&A organization, we did an inventory of functions and competencies that supported strategic development, planning, and follow-up. And that served as the red thread behind our thinking of putting them all under one roof. And this actually made the next steps a little bit easier. So the next step was to start to align follow-up processes, definitions, and also systems. We started a couple of years back, but have now successfully implemented a common planning tool as well as a follow-up tool. And this is no rocket science in itself, but it's a very big step for an organization that was used to do things in their own way. Automation, I would say, has also been very high on our agenda when rolling out new tools and processes. We are now running a forecast tool with a high degree of automation and assisting functionality, which made it possible to increase the frequency and also to forecast and plan at the lowest level of the organization. Competence is another area where we have put a lot of emphasis to ensure that we can provide added value, which in turn help us to earn our seat at the table. We early on focused on the most integrated functions like M&A and purchasing, which we could use as spearheads in getting the business side to see the value of the close cooperation and alignment of processes and systems. Transparency is also something that needs to be mentioned. Systems are great, and when rolled out, they can help in creating transparency, but the most important is the cooperation on individual level, where we are now in a place where we involve and the business side involves us on a continuous basis, not only in planning and follow-up, but also in the always ongoing business development. If we now move on to the next slide, I will speak a little bit about agility. So how can an integrated FP&A function support agility? Remember my main points on the benefits of standardization, automation, and structural capital. To become more agile in the whole organization, in my view, we need to standardize and automate all administrative processes. Because in an agile environment, we do not have time for tedious processes with templates to fill in and so on. We have, like many organizations, come from a situation with heavy planning activities, mostly done at the end of the year. Templates, iterations, it's silo-based, reactive, you name it, not very agile. We are now striving for something much more frequent and in the longer run continuous. We still see a need for compiling plans at some points of time to distribute them to the board, to other decision bodies, etc. But we aim for them being a snapshot of something that is done on a continuous basis. Step one for us was to increase the forecasting frequency and to do it bottom up only, no top down. Step two was to update capital plans quarterly. Step three was to use our spearheads, M&A and purchasing, to work with the business on a continuous basis with the business development. Next steps will be to make the investment and initiative planning processes continuous and to further automate the forecasting and capital planning activities and processes. So I would say we are definitely not yet at continuous, but we are at least moving in the right direction. So quite a lot still to do in this field. Let's move to the final slide then on key success factors. And the first thing I would point out, and maybe I should have written it 3 times, because competence, competence, competence. I think having the experience of and you would say the benefit of being able to recruit and develop a team of highly trained specialists within M&A, purchasing, capital planning, and strategy development, I would say that has been the key success factor actually from starting to make this transition. And the other point I would like to make is take standardization to the extreme and automate as much as you can. This is extremely important to become agile, especially because if we don't standardize, we usually confuse each other and we basically become less efficient. And there's also a tendency, if you don't standardize, that people feel free to invent the wheel again, and again. So to avoid that, when we do planning activities and so on, we avoid the situation where we basically start from the beginning again every time. And the third point I would like to make is consider the FP&A function as a team, not a team of teams. In the previous presentation, that was mentioned this about the cross-functional work, etc. And that is, of course, also very important to consider the whole organization basically as a team. Of course, there are still teams, but they should cooperate very, very closely. And then I also would like to point out that if you would like to make a transition like this, or if you are in a transition like this, focus first on where you can actually add value. Use the spearheads. To make changes on all fronts at the same time is usually not a very successful approach. So one has to start somewhere, and then try to start where you have the highest degree of competence, where you get the acceptance from the business. And finally, as well, I would also like to point out that you need to be persistent. You need to allow it to take some time. These are big changes, and they will take a lot of time and effort. So by those words, I'm ready for commentaries. Thank you.
Jonas, thank you so much. What a great presentation, and congratulations. So many responsibilities. And it's wonderful to see how finance is going outside of finance department and actually to extended planning and analysis. Thank you for this. And I would like to ask L'Oreal to comment on this. Anything resonated with you?
Certainly. So first, Jonas, thanks so much for sharing your experience and what you've gone through in this journey. I think it's important for us to hear that firsthand experience. So the two particular points that stood out to me, and one of those was the emphasis on standardization and automation. So that part's near and dear to my heart. And it says to me the importance of standardizing before automating. In many instances, we try to automate without having done that, and then we end up with disparate processes all over, and we don't get to reap the value that he calls out from an addition perspective. And so that one's important. And then I would underscore 4 more times competence, competence, competence. You can't get away from that, even if we have the right technology and the right tools in place. If we have better processes, if we don't have the competence within our teams to be able to carry those forward and truly integrate the value that we're able to get, then we won't succeed in a sustainable way. So truly appreciate your insights, Jonas.
Thank you, L'Oreal. Thank you. Robert?
Without wanting to repeat what L'Oreal already said, I think it's extremely important to look at a reorganization of the overall process with all the different team members involved. You have it here as one team and not team of teams. I think this is very important, that you actually have a look at who shall actually do what at what time, and you'll have to go through a redefinition of your governance.
Thank you, Robert. And Rainer, you are the last one to comment, please.
Exactly. Jonas mentioned competence and one more competence, and I would like to state this as well in regards of it's the competence and the understanding of the process and of the new implemented, probably application or automated solution, because this then the competence and the understanding, this foster the collaboration between the teams and the communication then as well. So there we can improve the complete process then much better.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your commentaries. And once again, thank you for this wonderful presentation, Jonas. Now we would like to hear from our audience. And now this is the time for the next polling question. I'm launching this right now. We would like to understand what is happening in your world from the point of view of decision-making, instant decision-making. I'm launching the poll, and please, can you start voting as soon as you see this polling question? So we're asking you, can your organization make instant decisions and deploy them as the result of real-time insights today? Yes, we can. Not yet, but we have already started this journey. No, we cannot. I think this is unrealistic. So what is your answer? Please, can you continue to vote? Just a few seconds. So what is the best description of your organization's ability to make instant decision-making process based on real-time insights today? So more than 60% of you voted. I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. Interesting results. So 47% no, we can't, and 2% of you think that it's unrealistic. 46% already started this journey, and yes, 5% already there. Jonas, any commentaries from your side?
Yeah, it seems like the group is really divided. It's basically 50-50 in each end. I'm a little bit surprised actually that as many as 47% don't believe that we cannot make it at all. Unrealistic, there are a few. Maybe this also comes from the fact that in some areas it might be very difficult to make this transition, or maybe even real time is not really necessary. But I'm also impressed with the fact that 46% have already started this journey. That is actually surprised me a little bit that it was anyway that much or that many.
It's so much in line with FP&A Trends survey, and it's wonderful that half of the audience already on this way. I'm hiding the results. Thank you so much for your commentary, Jonas, and thank you everyone who voted. And we are moving on. And the next one is this amazing case study of real-time collaboration, real-time decision-making process. And we are talking about continuous planning process, real-time planning, technology view, and operations view. I would like to ask our panelists to join in. So Robert and Raina, please, can you share with us the vision, this amazing case study? You're welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Larissa, for this very nice introduction. Yeah, I think in the next couple of minutes, Robert and me will share with you our Clariant's journey, how we have implemented our real-time cost forecasting and pricing tool. And yeah, let's see what's on our agenda. I think first we are starting with the why. So why have Clariant decided to go with a new forecasting tool? We will explain you what and how has been implemented, what has been achieved at least, yeah, and what were our key success factors, followed by the same, that the recommendations if you would like to go with the same solution or a similar solution. What are the next developments? This is our last slide deck, which we would like to share. And overall, I think this will be hopefully an interesting journey, which we can take you with you. I would like us to ask Robert now to start with the why, with the background of Clariant, why Clariant has decided to go with this new fantastic tool.
Thanks. On the next slide, you'll actually see an overview and introduction of Clariant. Clariant is a company in the specialty chemical market. We have a relatively high complexity. If you look at the value chain, we are starting with several tens of thousands of raw materials. We are producing several tens of thousands of different finished goods around the world in many different plants. And if you look at the processes, they are very often multi-stage processes, partially also going across different plants or legal entities. In addition, we are within a market which is changing extremely fast, very much driven also by politics. If you look at the supply chains out of Asia, out of China at the moment, there are many things missing. Thinking about chips for cars or for computers, this has huge impacts then also on availability and then also on prices. So this is something which we are exposed to. And then if you look at what impact that has on our P&L, since raw material costs actually attribute for more than 50% or around 50% of our sales, it's a major impact. So we have a high necessity to actually create transparency of impacts of effects coming in on the supply side and then showing what kind of effects we have on the outside. If you look at the value chains, we also want to create higher transparency there, as it's sometimes also difficult both for our sales and also our customers to see what is actually a driver for a need for price adaptations. And last, and this is going into the future, we are not only looking at impacts on pricing, on the input pricing, but also looking at how can we actually calculate effects on the sustainability side. And this is then going into the outlook of what we want to achieve. Now, giving you on the next slide a history of what we have been doing and for what reasons. On forecasting, we actually started 2008-9 after the first financial crisis to implement a first forecasting tool. At that time, we had to do it with a manual process based on Excel. It was slow, it was cumbersome. It took us multiple weeks to actually get a forecast in and then convert it over through multiple steps into effects on the sales good, on the finished good costs, which could then be actually converted over into actions on the pricing side. 2015, that was approximately when we had the oil price drop. We had a big workshop with all the different functions involved, from procurement through controlling or FP&A, over to operations and also sales and marketing, and developed a vision of an end-to-end pricing process. So a real vision actually where we wanted to go. One difficulty we had was actually to find someone who actually could enable us to do that. And the biggest difficulty was to find a calculation engine which was capable of making all the calculation through the multi-step bill of materials, and also going into looking at it in different scenarios or different versions. 2020, last year, all during COVID, we actually went into the realization. We found a good partner with MIPCON, where we co-developed this solution, enabling us actually to work with increased volatilities on the input side, where we can also enter price changes anytime. It's also going over into real-time communication between the different departments along the internal value chains, so from procurement to operations over to sales and marketing, allowing us to also get a full transparency of all the effects across the very complex bill of materials or value chains. And last also to not only show the effect of a change, but also have a possibility to actually analyze it in the other way, so that a sales manager in a certain product range area in a region sees a certain price increase, but then also can find out what were the actual drivers of it. Having all this here, we then wanted to go into a next generation pricing process, which we then also now implemented last year globally with a very agile Fpna, allowing us to adapt our pricing based on a fast and fact-based calculation. Now, Rainer, maybe you can go a bit more into depth on what we did in the next step, please.
Yes, exactly. What has been integrated and implemented, and probably some of the reasons why we have done this was already mentioned by Robert. So our main goal was all about transparency and speed, of the new process. What we have implemented is now a fully integrated process over different business areas. We are starting with the procurement colleagues, going through with all the operations departments, and ending up with our key addressees, with the sales department, and not last but not least, to mention the financial planning community then later on. So we have really a fully integrated end-to-end process in place already. It's true real time, so we have tightened our time frame from 6 weeks having the business information about raw material price increases in our company, but we're not able to turn this over and take this into an action in real time. So this process was about 6 weeks long. Now we are complete and real time. We have implemented, as already said, this process newly with a complete mindset change, which means covered all the procurement, all the business, and all the planning community. Yeah? And we are now able to turn the raw material market into information, yeah, over the cost effects of the finished good into real decisions for the sales community. Yeah? We become now more and more agile, so we are working with this tool really actively, and we are becoming proactive, which means we are predicting prices, we are predicting the effects towards the finished goods, and we are therefore able to improve our margins in these volatile markets. So how we have implemented this will be shown on the next slide. This is the standardized picture about our new simulation tool, and it follows strictly the simple process steps like input, process, output. When we have looking on the left-hand side of the picture, you see the input side, and there we are putting in all the material price information, and this is purely driven by the knowledge holder itself, means only the procurement colleagues, only the responsible sources, so only the responsible persons which are really able to have this information and are able to step in this tool and giving this information into our web-based solution. This information will be taken over in the middle section of the process in this calculation engine, where we are turning this information and calculating this information towards the finished good, which means we are taking our BOM structure, all our recipes from the complete set of products within Clariant, and calculating the effects towards each finished good, yeah, in the middle section. Output section, yeah, is SAP Analytics cloud-based reporting. It's an instant reporting, and we are able to customize this very, very easily according our business needs. What has been achieved? Robert, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thanks, Rainer. On the next one, we have a summary actually of what we achieved. As we already mentioned before, we have the absolute capability to simulate cost. It's not just calculations or single calculations. It's multiple calculations for costs, let's say, along every single month of a forecast period. And we can, and this is equally important, then also calculate in different scenarios. In our case, we actually are running two different scenarios. One is the way we see that the market will develop, and the second one is the way we forecast what our own cost development is. Why is there a difference in it? It's coming from procurement activities where we believe that we are achieving a benefit against market developments. And this is what the procurement guys are actually trying to do. They're generating so-called savings. And if these scenarios are plausible, we can actually then also use, let's say, a market scenario or a combination of both scenarios on the pricing process to adapt our pricing accordingly. In the past, we only had our actual cost development. So all the savings were actually never visible in finished good pricing. So therefore, it was also not visible, let's say, to a sales side. And with other words, the chance that we were actually throwing out all our savings out of the window was rather big. Having now both different scenarios, we have a tool in our hands, allowing us to potentially increase also our margin. As Rainer said, we have it real time. It's really real time. If you actually enter a new forecast now, press the button, immediately the salespeople can actually see the impacts. This is really real time. Before, as you mentioned before, Ryan, it took something like 6 weeks from the forecast through all the calculations, which took about 3 weeks until it was converted over into effects on the sales side. And at that time, the visibility of the effects was arriving on the sales side when they were already obsolete, because the world is changing much faster. All this allows us to actually improve our pricing process and get to better pricing decisions. By using a multitude of different data, you're looking at past data, where are the customers today within the pricing ranges, what effects are we getting in from the forecasts which are going to come, and then you can make very qualified pricing decisions. So we're going into a very proactive pricing, reflecting market changes very early. And through that, because we actually have a foresight of what is coming in before it actually hits the inventories, our systems, we actually have a chance also of having margin enhancements. This in addition to having both different scenarios. The effect of this in the organization, we actually went into one team with different business partners. You have a procurement which is fully integrated in the overall processes and becoming really true business partners and not just a service unit. Now this is on this side. Now I'd like to give you some insights, a bit of view of what there is. On the next slide, you see what Rainer said before on the input side. This is a relatively easy mask for the input tool, where you have possibilities to adapt the whole selection criteria of how the procurement manager actually gets his products out. This is customized. It's very simple to use. We have more than 100 persons using it without any issue at all and without the big training. We have a clear authorization concept, who actually has access to which data, and also to avoid garbage in, garbage out, we also have a clear approval process here in case deviations are above a certain magnitude. And it allows us really to be very instant in making changes visible. And the next slide is then going to the right-hand side of what Rainer explained. These are typical reports you can generate out of SAP Analytics Cloud. They are being customized by different user groups, whether this is now on the procurement side, operations side, sales, marketing, FP&A side. They all can actually get the information they need and which they are authorized also to get. And with this, and combined with historic data, you actually can get really enhanced analytics out of this. So this was the insight we could give you up till here. Rainer will give you some insights on the outlook and also the key success factors we actually had and where we are going in our journey.
Exactly. Let me start first with our key success factors, so the ones which we have identified as our main drivers for the project success, and as well now, which are our recommendations in regards of doing the same or the similar. First of all, it's really very, very important to mention that we had a top management support. As well, the top management identified here the need of having a new process established, a transparent process established, and identified as well that there is a strong need of speed within the process, which we need to achieve in order to be in the market and react on the market. Second is the complete process redesign with all the new governances, with the roles and responsibilities, goes complete in the direction what Jonas mentioned in regards of competencies and of understanding of the process, with assigning the right competencies into the right process step. Yeah, this we managed as well. The cross-functional team setup, which was an important information coming out of L'Oréal's presentation, that we need to have, and this we were successful in having a cross-functional team setup from the beginning of starting the project. And there was in all the steps, all the people involved in getting the design, the testing and the implementation done. And this fosters in the very end, or has fostered in the very end, the involvement of the people and the ownership and the governance of our application and the solution in the end. What is on the plate for the next developments? You can see on the next slide. And having here in mind what Robert and me already told in terms of input, process and output, having this set up in place, we are able to use different key drivers using the very same calculation logic which is already set up, and then get the right information out. We have started, as you know, with our pricing forecasts in regard of raw materials, and we are now supporting complete new initiatives. We are talking about sustainability initiatives in terms of carbon footprint analysis, which means we are changing from a price input to an emission factor input in terms of greenhouse gas. We are as well able to look at the share of recycled-based materials, of bio-based materials, as well as important information from the sustainability in getting more green, getting a green company. We would like to support in future the tender business in the new composition of bombs. So we would like to have a functionality in place where we are able to replace certain materials with others out of the bombs. So making use of different finished goods setups and different complete new products which are currently not in scope or not currently in production and ready for sale. As well, we are intending to support the full business modeling in the very end. So we are not only predicting the prices of the raw materials, we would like to as well combine and calculate them as well the predicted sales quantity and the predicted sales prices, and this gives then us a complete picture, or hopefully a complete picture in terms of future margin which can be achieved in our business. So this was my final slide, and I would like now to open up the discussions from our partners.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Rainer. Amazing example of real-time decision making. And I remember, Robert, you mentioned that you had this vision some time ago, and congratulations on implementing this vision. I would like to invite our other panelists to switch on the cameras, and just a quick commentary before we go to the Q&A session, and a quick reminder to all the participants, please continue to send your questions. We will answer all of them. Even if not during this webinar, we will do this after the webinar in writing. So thank you so much. And L'Oréal, your commentary, please.
Certainly. So for those who don't recognize it, this is the future of our profession. And I think it's incredibly important to say that up front. We have been talking for a decade or more about the possibility of data analytics and what it could do to inform decision making. And in many instances, we haven't truly reached that level yet. Even in the scenarios they give, where it's heads and shoulders beyond where most of the organizations are, they still recognize much more room to grow, many more opportunities from a decision support perspective. And so I think it's important to recognize, when we think about if we're fully integrated now, if we're leveraging real-time data from a decision support perspective, what's our true goal? What are we truly looking forward to? And so I think this is an excellent use case. It's a rare one, in my opinion, based on the conversations that I've had with hundreds of finance and accounting professionals, FP&A professionals across the globe. And it certainly should be aspirational for those of us who have not yet attained unto that. So incredibly impressed by the use case, looking forward to learning more about what you employ down the line, the driver-based model, et cetera, certainly the path to where we need to be.
Thank you so much, L'Oreal. I would like to add, it's also a great example of FP&A, extended planning and analysis, when planning is going outside of finance. So great example. Jonas, what would be your commentary?
Yeah, first of all, wow. I think it's really impressive. And I like taking things to the extreme, and I think these guys have taken it to the extreme. This about real time, I think one comment would also be that I understand that you operate in a business where this is really needed. You have a clear use for it. It's moving very fast. Prices shift very, very quickly. And that is not the case in all businesses. But I think there's still a reason for striving in this direction, because as you also point out in your presentation, that this has also driven the change in itself to become real time, has also driven a need for a much closer cooperation, because that's the only way you can manage it, right? If it's going that fast, you need to make sure that everybody cooperates, everybody joins forces, and that is something that I really like. I mean, if you just think about what we normally do in finance departments when we have a change program, we usually set up a goal that we should produce the report a couple of days faster. I think the value of that is not that you get the information sooner. The value in that is actually that it forces us to become more efficient. So I think this is something that we really could be inspired from, even in businesses where real time is perhaps not really needed from a business perspective. But I think it's also just thinking about real time forces you to become much more efficient, to standardize, automate, etc.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Robert and Raina, any commentaries from you?
Yeah, I'd like to actually go back to two things. One is our vision we had. The vision actually came from a situation where we had a high pain. And the high pain was with increasing volatility, always being behind the wave and experiencing margin squeeze. And by not being able to react fast enough, yeah, we lost out. So we wanted to actually improve our process. We created our vision of what we wanted to have back in around 2015, and we're dreaming of real time. So we had our vision, but the problem was that we did not have the technology, and technology was not available at that time. That's why it took us several years until we actually found someone who could help us to actually realize this vision in going into this complicated calculations across all the different bill of materials, and then going into simulation in different versions and scenarios. And only after we got this technology, and here we're coming back into polling question number 2, you need the technology. Without that, it will not work. You will not get the technology and the money and the process, the leadership support. You definitely need all the skills, and this is where coming back to also Jonas. Yes, competence, competence, competence. You definitely need that to also redesign the whole process. But then you also have to go into the process transformation. And yes, in the end, you also need the resources. So actually, if you look at polling question number 2, you will need all 5 of them to be able to get to your target.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert. We need to move on now, and now we would like to hear from our audience. We would like to hear what is happening with technology in your world. So please, can you start voting as soon as you have you see this polling question? So what is the primary technology you use for your FP&A in your organization? Is it Excel? Is it ERP module? Is it a dedicated FP&A system or EPM? Or is it integrated performance management platform? Please, can you choose one which is the best description for you? Please, can you continue to vote? Just a few seconds. So what is the main technology you use for FP&A in your organization? Is it just Excel? Is it a special ERP module, or is it a dedicated FP&A system, or is it already integrated performance management platform? Please continue to vote, just a few seconds. We are closing the poll and we are sharing the results with everyone. Yes, 63% still use Excel. 17% use ERP module, 9% have a dedicated FP&A system, and 11% have this integrated performance management platform. Raina, what would be your commentary on this?
Yeah, not very surprising is this result of this polling. I think this is as well. This was as well our starting point in having all this Excel technology in place, and which is partly for sure for other processes as well still in place. So the Excel is the one of the major tool where the people are using for planning purposes. Yeah. In regards of all the others, okay, that's more or less, you know, in between. But I think Excel, it was the starting point as well for us to take up our journey and to follow up with this complete new process, having this new technology in place and getting then the results not only for the knowledge holder of the Excel and all these VLOOKUPs and all these calculations in there, but as well for a broader community and spread the complete process through the complete organization.
Thank you so much for your commentary, Raina, and your quick commentary, Robert. Anything that surprises you here?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but I see an issue if you're always using Excel as the base to create a common truth or single truth, where I think all the different organizations want to go to in the FP&A departments. I think here you need to have a standardized process across the board, and if everyone is working on their own individual Excels, it will be difficult to achieve a single truth.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for commentaries. Thank you for voting. I'm hiding the results. And we are moving on. And now it's all about key takeaways. All our panelists, please can you switch on your cameras? And we are starting with these key takeaways from the session. This is the slide that actually the matrix that combines all of those important steps that are needed for integrated FP&A. But I would like your quick commentaries on key takeaways from this session. L'Oreal, you're the first.
Certainly. So I think the key takeaway for me is, one, the need for integrated FP&A. So I think truly in its fundamental form, we often work in silos as organizations, as respective departments or functions or segments within an organization. And so the need for integration is incredibly important, as each of our respective functional areas are increasingly required to support strict strategy and strategic decisions. And that can't truly happen in a sustainable way, in an effective way, without integrating the strategic plan, the financial planning process, the operational planning process. And then the other side of that, I think, is not wanting to discount the people side of things. That's one of the pieces that's called out here: integrated people, well beyond even the organizational structure and design. It's the competence, and it's also how we interact, how we collaborate, this concept of multidisciplinary teams. It gets back to underscoring the need to eliminate silos if we truly want to reap, or I'd say maximize the value that our organizations are able to deliver, be it real-time data-driven approaches to decision-making, or just having real-time access to the data so that when a time-sensitive decision is needed, then you have that information available to you. So most important takeaways for me, we got a wonderful glimpse into the future, and hopeful that people are able to start using some of these takeaways in their organizations.
Excellent takeaways. Thank you, L'Oreal. Jonas, what would be your advice?
Yeah, with the risk of repeating myself, competence, the importance of competence. But I think it cannot be understated, because it is needed in a change like this, what Robert and Ryan before. And it's also very crucial to get, so to say, when we talk about integration, it's basically about getting people to work together, to contribute, to share information, to share competence. And you have to bring something to the table to make your counterpart, so to say, appreciate what you're doing, and to see value in what you're doing, basically. So I think it cannot be understated. That is something that we need to bring with us. The second point would be technology. Yes, as it has been pointed out here before, it has developed a lot in recent years, and now we see that, at least in some organization, we can reap the benefit of advanced analysis. And that is something that is also very important to think about, because as I think you, L'Oreal, pointed out, we have been talking about this for 15 years, perhaps even more, about real time and being, so to say, able to use advanced analytics. But I've only really seen it in recent years in practice. But it's coming, and there is a lot of interesting technology out there that we can actually use.
Thank you, Jonas. Great points for us to remember after this session. And Robert, your key takeaways, please.
And I now come from the academic side and looking at integrated FP&A. What it enables much higher transparency of a single truth. If you have that, it will allow you to create much higher speed in getting insights, and through that also qualified decisions. And if you can achieve that, you actually also really get the collaboration between the different departments and become one organization. And if you're capable of doing that, and that's coming back to L'Oreal's main point, it increases agility. So it's actually all coming together. You need one process. Your graph here is showing a continuum. For me, it's something which is really integrated and not individual process. Yes, in the end, everything comes together if you're very fast. If it's real time, it's not individual steps anymore, it becomes one.
Thank you, Robert. Great insights. And Raina, finally you, the key takeaways from you, please.
I think my personal key takeaways are very, very simple. Yeah, if there is a need to have, and there is a need to have this integrated planning process, then you need to tackle the process itself, the resources, and the application. So all these three are in a very tight, in a very close combination and relationship to each other. And you are not allowed to forget one of these parts, because then you will fail. This is for sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your key takeaways. And now we are starting our Q&A session. And just a quick reminder, everyone, please use your text boxes to send your questions. We already have a lot of questions, and L'Oreal, the first is to you. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation. What are some of RPA technologies being used that you mentioned? This is the first question, and the second question to you. What it all mean for our FP&A profession from you as a professional body point of view, from your Institute of Management Accountants? So what all of those changes mean to us?
Yes, great question. So The first one, a really quick answer there, the RPA technologies, there are 3 leading RPA software vendors in the market today. That's Automation Anywhere, UiPath, and Blue Prism. So if this is a technical question about the actual software, those are the 3 largest, I'd say, RPA vendors that are in the market today, but there are a host of them. You can go look at it. Gartner's got a report out that speaks to the different softwares that are available. And there are, believe it or not, a lot of native solutions within your ERP system from a business processing perspective. Business process automation is really the broader concept. And so you may find that you may not have to go all the way to one of the RPA vendors. You may be able to leverage digital technology from an automation perspective within the ERP that you're leveraging today. There's been a great uptick over the last 3 to 5 years or so with making the automation tools that are within the ERP system more user-friendly and business-friendly as well. So that's the first question. The second question, what does all this mean to us from a profession perspective? I get this question a lot from student audiences because they'll ask, should I be concerned that I won't have a job when I finish my collegiate studies? And my quick answer is no, as long as you're committed to continuous learning. And that comes back to the competence point that we've called out today. I believe that it is absolutely certain that at some point in the future, the types of finance and accounting and FP&A processes that we performed as entry level, in our career, will no longer exist in a widespread state. Now, that's not 1 year out, it's not 2 years out, but at some point in the future, we will be in a place where we won't need to book journal entries. We won't need to manually process invoices or handle AR. And what that means well beyond that is how we shift our focus. And we shift our focus by upskilling. We shift our focus by developing additional skills in the digital technology space, in the strategy space, and being able to ourselves as FP&A professionals perform some of the tasks that you heard about today. And so what I think it means is, one, no, we won't see some significant decrease in the number of jobs that are available from an FP&A perspective. What we will see, however, is a shift in the types of activities that we perform and the way that we deliver value to our organizations, ideally in a more agile and a more integrated way.
Excellent. Thank you, L'Oreal. Thank you so much. Jonas, the next question is to you. Jonas, thank you for your insightful presentation. And the question is, how we can make sure that top-down and bottom-up processes are harmonized and we don't have this well-known gap between top-down and bottom-up planning processes when we finalize our budgeting and planning process. Your quick wins, please.
Yeah, and it is a challenge that one must admit. I think one have to go a little bit back to how do you set the expectations? Because one way to control the bottom up is also to have quite clear, so to say, guidelines or communicate expectations very clearly. And I also think you need to strive for a culture where you so to say get away from the classical budget thinking. I want to reserve an amount, or I want to make sure I have room to maneuver, or all those things. You really need to break that down. And there you need, I mean, just to be very clear about that, you need the CEO's full support, because otherwise it won't fly. So you need to create a culture where it's okay to be above as well as below. And that is more difficult to say than to do. I'm a witness of that, basically. But I think that is one way to make sure that you don't end up with big gaps. Of course, I mean, it's impossible. If you start from two ends, you will not meet exactly in the middle. That is a simple fact. But you should strive at least as far as you are nearly meeting each other in the middle, basically. But it goes back very much, I think, to a culture, to a mindset, more than using technology for it, because of course you can align things just using a calculation, but that will be a false alignment, basically. So.
Thank you so much, Jonas. A great answer. The next one is to Robert and Rainer. By the way, similar question lately. I received a lot of questions like this. So it's great to see sustainability analysis initiatives in chemical company. Can you please elaborate the brief roadmap and things to focus for successful implementation and show the real value addition? So you're welcome to answer together, or Raina, so what would be your answer?
Okay, that's not that easy to answer, let me say it in this way, but for sure there is an urgent need for the chemical industry to indicate the greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, and this is as well a need which we have from our suppliers, that we get their information of the raw materials which we are using for production, to be able then later on to calculate the complete emissions in our finished goods, so that we are able, yeah, in terms of letting our customers then know what they can, what we are delivering, yeah, in terms of emissions. And this is one of the one major initiatives we are currently driving, and we are hopefully finalizing this by mid of next year, so that we are able then to have a certificate, a proof of our greenhouse gas emissions from cradle to gate for every product which we are producing.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Yes, please,
maybe,
Robert.
maybe I can add something in addition, just looking at the chemical industry. Chemical industry is definitely an industry which is a lot petro-based. Starting material for most of the, at least the organic chemicals, has been crude oil. So therefore we have a high responsibility to have a look at where we are emitting greenhouse gases and how we can actually reduce them. Probably it's not really known to the public, but there are a lot of new technologies evolving. On the one hand, you have greenhouse gases within the process which are coming from the energy consumptions. And if you can switch those over, say from petro-based or crude oil-based over into sustainable energies, you're already reducing the emissions on that side. On the other hand, you can also look at the source of the carbon chain of the initial molecules, and if you can switch them over to a bio-based or even to a recycling of the carbon molecules into circulations, then you're actually reducing your carbon footprint in also the chemical industry. And that's exactly the direction we want to go. But we also have to have the capability, and that's exactly where we are working on it, is to actually also show it in a way which is understandable and also then certified and approved and accepted by the public. But this is where we are going with our calculation tool, to be able to make it visible. The technology first has to be implemented.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Rainer, for answers. Now the last question to both of you, but we have like 1 minute to answer because we need to finish on time. So thank you so much for your presentation. What would be your advice on the most important pieces of implementation on similar tool, but for the company that is, for the product that is less complex than yours? So if you can briefly answer, what would be the most important factors? So Robert and Rainer.
Rainer.
The most important factors, I think we have already indicated this at least a bit, yeah, in terms of having this process middle piece in place. Yeah, this is what we what is our backbone for the complete application and for the complete calculation. If that is missing, you can forget about the rest.
I think it's important also to be able to forecast along a timeline and maybe in different scenarios, independently on how complex your bill of materials are or your production process. And if you can have actually those possibilities of different simulations, then you become agile.
Thank you so much. Great answers, great panel. And now just a few final slides, and I would like to ask our participants to be with us. And because after we close this webinar, we will have a quick survey and we would like to hear from you. So I'm concluding this Q&A session, but all of those questions that were not answered, they will be answered after the meeting. So thank you so much, panelists. Great insights from you. Just a quick reminder, everyone, the last webinar for this year, it would be about cash flow approaches, rethinking the traditional approaches. The link is here and you're welcome to join this webinar. It will be on the 9th of December. Just a quick reminder that we finalized our 2021 survey, and you're welcome to download it and to see what is happening around the globe. And also, now I would like to say thank you so much to our great panelists. It was insightful discussion from 4 different points of view, from the point of view of finance practitioner, from the point of view of operations, technology, and thought leadership as well. So thank you for sharing this with us. We would like to say thank you so much to our partners and sponsors, SAP and IMA. Thank you for supporting us here. And finally, all our participants, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your votes and questions. And if you have anything to share with us, you know how to find us. So this is the way to connect. And finally, thank you so much, panelists, once again. So 5 countries, a lot of insights from different perspectives. I hope to see you very soon when we start to travel the world again. Thank you. Please stay safe and see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.